Hi, welcome to the Lisa Saunders Show. I'm Lisa Saunders, and today I have two friends with me. Debra is a repeat performer. Thank you for coming and bringing your guitar. And this dear friend came all the way from Houston, Texas to be here. You took a plane and a train and a car, because I picked you up from the Mystic train depot, but you've also been on a boat since you've been here.
Yes. And walked a lot, too.
Yes. Okay, so what are you doing here at Mystic?
Well, I'm having a great time, first of all, meeting a lot of wonderful people, seeing a lot of fascinating history. So Mystic is very magical, I've found. So first of all, I'm enjoying some vacation here and visiting some good friends.
You have a nice tan. Well, you always have the one. They're probably right from me.
Well, thanks.
Anyway.
But the reason I'm here on this show with you is to talk about something really important. I'm here to talk about a virus called Cytomegalovirus, or CMV. And most people have never heard of CMV. In fact, it's the most common virus most people have never heard of.
And I like when you said in another interview, Google it so that you know it's real. Because I feel like people don't believe me when I mention it. If you Google it.
That's exactly right. Because surely if this virus is so important, I should have heard about it. But once you Google it, you will know that it definitely is real. It definitely has an impact on a lot of lives.
And so what is the impact? What is it?
Well, CMV, like I said, the most common virus most people have never heard of. Most people will be infected with CMV at some time in their life. And most of the time it's what we call a reluctant pathogen or an opportunist. It doesn't want to make you sick. And most of the time you don't know you've caught CMV. It doesn't give you a rash like chickenpox or measles. It just silently infects you and most of the time lives in balance with you and doesn't want to bother you. However, there are some times that you don't want to catch CMV. Mm-hmm. And one of those times is when you're pregnant. Because CMV, when you're if you catch it while you're pregnant, it can, some of the time, not all the time, but some of the time, can be transmitted to your unborn baby. And then it can cause, sometimes it doesn't bother the unborn baby, sometimes it will cause a silent infection, or sometimes it can cause absolutely devastating problems in the unborn child.
And that's how we met, because that's what happened to my daughter. I was a licensed child care provider, didn't know it was at increased risk for cytomegalovirus, plus I had a toddler, another thing that puts you at increased risk. And that's how we met, because of what happened to my daughter being born severely disabled by the virus. And I've known you now since 2008, since the first CMV conference in this country. I think it was an international conference held in this country. Right, at the CDC. That was 2008.
Yes.
So have you've been to many conferences before that, right? Or was it just mostly medical people and researchers, or?
Well, there's a lot of people trying to get the word out about CMV because you can't really do anything about it if you don't know it exists. Mm-hmm. So there's a virtual village of a variety of very interesting people, not just doctors like myself, trying to get the word out about CMV so we can move forward to do something about it so we can prevent it. So there's researchers and clinicians like myself. I literally care for hundreds of babies with congenital CMV.
You do? Hundreds?
Oh, yes.
Because people think it's so rare, but it is the leading viral cause of birth defects.
You're exactly right. Between about 1% of babies will be born congenitally infected with CMV. That's 1 out of 100. Or so in some studies, 1 out of 200. So it's the most common congenital infection. Mm-hmm. So it is very common, but because it doesn't give you outside symptoms most of the time, you don't know you have it. It's like the elephant in our living room. It's there, it's huge, but most people don't see it.
Right, and disabilities can be, what can they be from this, for the baby?
So for the baby, if a baby is born with CMV, most of them, I'd say 90%, are actually born totally normal at birth. You can't pick them out from the normal newborn nursery, but yet they will be born shedding large quantities of virus, usually in their saliva, their urine. So they're infected, but they may not be affected. Mm-hmm. Of those babies that are silently infected, about 20% of them will go on to have a progressive hearing loss. They may slowly go deaf over the course of their childhood. Some babies are born affected by CMV. That's the sort of the tip of the iceberg. So the babies silently infected are what I call the silent majority of the babies. But there is a tip of the iceberg of babies that have symptoms at birth. They may have a small head. They may have a rash called petechiae or purpura, enlarged liver or spleen, a variety of other organ problems of their ears and of their eyes. And so those babies are at the greatest risk of having long-term problems. They can develop seizures, developmental disabilities, cerebral palsy, motor difficulties. But there's a broad range of outcomes. Some babies are mildly affected and leave normal to near normal lives, and some are severely affected.
And you started treating them years ago with what? What do you treat them with?
Well, because it's frustrating well, there are some antivirals that are available that can sort of take the edge off some of the long-term problems that CMV can cause in babies. There are antivirals that can be given. They can reduce the risk of hearing loss, improve their brain growth and their developmental milestones, but it doesn't cure.
Right.
And so we need something more to really make an impact on CMV.
And so what have you, like, this is really partly why Debra's here, because right now all we have is prevention education. That's the only thing we can do right now to help people not have this in the first place, because there's no vaccine yet, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there are lots of different people, amazing people trying to get the word out about CMV, not just doctors like myself or researchers like myself, but there are families, moms and dads and grandparents like yourself who were affected by CMV for the first time when you had your baby. And you were told that your baby, Elizabeth, has CMV. And you probably said, what? I've never heard of CMV.
That?
What is that? Surely I should have heard about it.
Right.
And so people like you, many mothers say, why those that came after me, why did you not warn me?
Right.
And so that's exactly what you're trying to do.
Right.
And many families like you, through a variety of different avenues.
Now, how can you prevent it?
So for CMV, so we know that CMV is common, and it's commonly passed between people, but it requires close contact. It's not airborne and highly contagious like measles, chickenpox, smallpox. So it requires close contact, saliva contact, sharing food and drinks, the intimacy, if you will, of family life. In daycare centers, it can be transmitted very readily between the toddlers and the preschoolers because as adorable as toddlers are, they do have less than hygienic daily practices, and they shed it amongst themselves, and then they also can spread it through the daily activities of caring for a toddler, kissing, sharing food or drink, and that sort of thing. So daycare workers and families are actually the hot zones, if you will, for CMV transmission.
Right. And Debra, we became friends over your other music, of your singer-songwriter, and when I've talked to you about my daughter's life, you read my book, you became moved. So tell us what you're doing to try to stop this or prevent it.
Well, I was inspired by your passion, really, and I came to know you and love you as a friend, and I learned more about your mission, and I just wanted to be able to apply what I do, which is put words and music to various causes, to messages, to missions, and that's something that I feel I can do with my love and gift of playing and singing and writing. So I just decided that time we did the March of Dimes walk, I'm going to write a song, for Elizabeth.
I love having a song, and you invited my husband and I over to your house on the lake, and we sat there, and you sat at your piano and played it, and I just burst into tears.
Yeah, well, it's emotional,
Right.
True, but what other people have said is that it's hopeful. It's emotional and it's hopeful because there is hopeful inherent in the act of writing something that will help other people, because that's the part that I was so drawn to in you, that you were passionate. You had this thing happen to you and this incredibly heartbreaking incident with your daughter, and to take that grief and then to recycle it, if you will, and try to help other people so it could be prevented, so someone else wouldn't have to go through what your family did.
And you just volunteered many, many hours to do it, and you came up with a wonderful title, Had I Known. Because had I known, as a child care provider, I would save time by using diaper wipes to wipe my hands after changing diapers and picking up toys. That does not kill CMV. I should have been at the sink with soap and water. Had I known, I wouldn't have shared cups with my toddlers. Had I known. And you, just from you talked to me. You tried to find out what's it like to be me. What do I think? She was asking me, what are moms talking about at conferences? And I said, there was a mother that stood up there and said, you mothers that have gone before me, why didn't you why didn't you tell me? And I knew she wasn't yelling at me. Your hands are full, believe me, when you have a child with severe disabilities. But once you know something, you want to share it because it can prevent that from happening to other children.
Right.
So you brought your guitar and you're willing to play it. And we have images that will flash when you're playing it so we can see you and my daughter growing up.
Great. In the days I carried you, all the ways I cared, sippy cups and kisses too, plates of food were shared, a blissful life at mother's speed. Why would I be alarmed? Thought love was all I'd ever need to keep my kids from harm. First time I laid eyes on you, the moment you were born, the feeling that came over me, a stab of fear so strong. So began the surgeries, the stretching and the strain. Oh, how we loved your quiet smile, your sweet light, pure and brave. Had I known I'd be someone else today, I'd have something else to say. Had I known, had I known, life wouldn't have turned upside down. You could have been here with us now. Had I known. If only someone told me of all that could go wrong. It's too easy not to talk about it. The silent virus has been hidden far too long. It's something they call CMV. Most children will be spared. Were they not at liberty to tell, afraid to scare? There's a promise that I made to keep as I let you go. My precious one, I'll sing this song so all the world will know. Had I known I could have found another way, I wouldn't wonder every day. Had I known, had I known, my heart would not have hit the ground. You might have been beside me now. Had I known.
Wow.
Well,
Beautiful.
it's my honor to offer this to the village of people trying to educate, legislate, and make a difference, really.
And you've given people permission. Play it. You had somebody contact you. Can I play this before a presentation?
Oh,
yes, that's why I wrote it. So
I wrote it for all people, really, who could possibly be in that situation, and it could be prevented. So.
And your recorded version is lovely too. You really had quite a time. You had, how many musicians did you get on for the recorded version?
About half a dozen.
Half a dozen.
Yeah.
What are the instruments that you had? Like what did you have?
Well, my friend played bass, and there's a cellist, and there's a violinist, and Connie Howard, who wrote the music, is playing keyboards, and Jim Carpenter, who produced and recorded it, is playing some guitar too. So it's really a wonderful production.
And so that in itself is a village.
That's right.
Right. A musical village, that's true. And
musicians.
everybody, and my friends did it for me and for the cause, and it was a wonderful, another example of a village, like they just got it, that this is This is the good work, as Jim had said. This is the good work. So we've got to, bridge music and art with the work that has to be done. There's no shortage of that.
And my husband's sister's done a lot of artwork for my children's stories that I try to tell about, setting the table and not sharing cups. So,
Right.
I hope she knows how much I appreciate her work. And you met her.
Oh, yeah. I love her. She did my logo. Yeah, she's wonderful. Yeah.
And you've always encouraged these wide ways of sharing because you've proofread a lot of my stuff, and I can't thank you enough.
Oh, that's been my honor. I mean, because those of us who are CMV experts, if we just keep talking to each other, we're not really getting the word out. And I think there's a lot of different ways that we can get the CMV word out. Not only through what I do with scientific writing, or what you do with beautiful your art, your performance art, or what you do with your TV show and your writings, but there's a lot of other people that are trying to get the word out
and
as
this
well.
TV studio is constantly running that slide. If you noticed it when she was singing, I just created a slide and they run it
And
all the time on their
kudos to
bulletin
them.
board. I love them for doing that.
If even one pregnant woman sees this message, then this message may save one baby.
That's right.
And that's what it's all about. So that's awesome that this TV station does that.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of other mothers also, and fathers, and family members trying to get the word out through legislation. I know that you were very instrumental in passing along Connecticut for CMV testing for babies who have hearing loss. I was very instrumental in passing along Texas for CMV education of pregnant women. And now there's many states. Utah was the first, and then many are falling like dominoes to legislate education and testing for CMV. So that's another very positive thing that's going on. There's a lot of interest.
And now there's a conference coming up that you and I will both be at, the CMV Public Health and Policy Conference. It's up there on the screen, September 23rd to the 25th, 2018 in Burlington, Vermont. And that's really, I get so much out of going to these conferences, and anybody can go up into the last minute. They can sign up for it, I found out.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. This is a very powerful conference. There's not just educators, researchers, clinicians, there's policymakers, there's families, and everybody is brought together in one venue to energize themselves and to also talk about how we can change the landscape of CMV from being something that is silent to something that is a household word, to something that we want to prevent.
Right, because everybody's heard of Zika, so if we could get it as known as Zika, it's just that we're all afraid of mosquitoes, and we love the kitty litter virus pregnant women do, because, oh good, I don't have to clean, change the kitty litter. But it's, when you tell people you can't kiss your toddler around the mouth, nobody really wants to tell you that message. But you do have to learn how to just kiss them on the cheek.
Exactly. You don't want to be scared of your toddler. You don't want to be scary about it. It's a positive message of not sharing is caring.
I like that. Did you make that up?
Somebody
did.
Somebody in the village
Okay,
did.
I like that. Not sharing is caring.
Or, CMV stops with me. So that's another sort of saying that it's if I know about it, then I can take that information about how CMV is spread and make my own decision while I'm pregnant to reduce my risk of catching CMV from our known sources, which are toddlers, preschoolers, people who are actively infected with CMV. And while I'm pregnant, protect my unborn fetus by not sharing is caring.
Right. I'd like to see everybody know before they get pregnant, because there's a lot of decisions you have to make. Do you want to work in childcare with children 2 and under? You should all know to talk to your primary health provider. Do I want to do that? But people don't know. They can't make their own educated guess about what they want to do to protect their pregnancy.
Well, you have to know that it exists in order to ask questions about it.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do, so people know that CMV, first, it exists. And second, they can practice 3 simple hygiene precautions that will reduce their risk of catching CMV. Don't kiss toddlers on the mouth or around the mouth. Kiss them on top of the head. Give them big hugs instead. Don't share food or drink with them. Have their own table setting, like you do with one of the very creative ways that you're trying to get the word out with your own place setting. So your child has their place setting, you have yours. And the third is wash your hands carefully, preferably with warm soapy water, after you've wiped their drool or after you've changed their diapers. Most people wash their hands really well after poopy diapers.
Right.
But not so much about the wet diapers or about wiping their nose, but try and do that as well, and that will reduce your risk. And so that's what we call the information vaccination or the knowledge vaccine for CMV. There's no injectable traditional vaccine yet, though there's many companies working on a CMV vaccine.
There is.
Yeah.
That would be great. When that now it's in the herpes virus. Is that what makes it harder to come up with one? Or what?
Well, if you gave CMV an IQ test, it would be off the chart. It's an incredibly smart virus.
Okay.
And it immunovades, so once it infects you, that's how it can sort of hang out. And then only comes to the party when there's certain vulnerabilities, like an unborn fetus. And so with CMV, that's one of its ways that it can be so powerful. It's so silent and it's so smart. It just sort of hangs back. But there's a lot of companies working on a vaccine. It's not going to be easy. If it was been easy, we would have had a vaccine by now because research started in the 70s. There's been many.
And we're having researchers coming to the conference.
Oh, yes, there'll be researchers, yes.
Yeah.
And, yes. And once you have a vaccine, then you have to decide who will get the vaccine and then how you deliver the vaccine and how you make policies about the vaccine. So it gets the village all together. But right now, I think the first step is, because knowledge is power, to tell everybody about CMV, that it exists and what it does and how people can do something about it.
Right, because Connecticut passed a law that you have to test a newborn for their hearing screen. They all have to have one in the state of Connecticut, and then if they fail their hearing screen, they're tested for CMV. So prevention education didn't pass because that costs money, but at least because now they have to know what they're testing for, it has, Dr. Brenda Balch has done a lot to get a lot of materials out there so people can know this is what it is, CMV. So prevention education is available now on the website, but I still need to get it out there. And so thankfully you wrote that song, and I hope to have you everywhere on my show all the time. And there are other things I'm trying to do, just at least so child care providers can know. Licensed child care providers are trained in infectious disease prevention, but I know a lot of them still have never heard of CMV, and they use diaper wipes to save time. They're not supposed to. Everybody has in place that you're not supposed to do that, but people are busy. Oh, it must help somewhat, and it doesn't, according to a study I read.
Well, it was my hope that because music carries a message in a way that just words and literature don't, that it can be used to help carry the emotional message, that people will hear something in a song that they may not hear in just speaking.
You're right, because they glaze over when you hear, don't do this, don't do that, but when you're hearing
a song
you
that
sing the song.
It elevates the message. Wait a minute, this is important, I should pay attention, and I'm feeling something. That was the whole point. And because it came from my heart, I know that it carries an emotional message. So,
And hopefully with that emotional message, people, and especially moms, might be more mindful to take that extra second to do something a little bit more, takes a little bit more effort, but in the long run would be a lot more
And you've been working with this for how many years?
Oh, many moons.
We don't have to
decades.
say in case it's
Over 30 years.
a secret.
Over 30 years. Some of my patients with CMV are in their 30s. My youngest is just a month old. My oldest is about 35. So I've been doing CMV that long.
And I met one of them who you gave that treatment to, and she's in grad school, or she finished grad school.
Oh, yes. Yeah, one of the first babies to get an antiviral in the state of Texas.
She's the age of my daughter. And
she's very bright. She's deaf, has a cochlear implant, but she is a brilliant young woman and doing very well.
That's wonderful. She was very lucky to have you, and I'm lucky that you came on my show. Thank you, and thank you, Debra. Do you mind just finishing up the show with your song?
Of course.
Because I love to hear you play.
Had I known I'd be someone else today, I'd have something else to say. Had I known, life wouldn't have turned upside down. Could have been here with us now. Had I known, have turned upside down. You could have been beside me now, had I known. Had I known, I could have found another way. I wouldn't wonder every day, had I known. Had I known, my heart would not have hit the ground. You might have been beside me now, had I known.